Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of The Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario, and online experiences to anyone in this mortal realm. My name is Jim Dean, and it is my privilege to be your haunted host for this episode. It's late November 2024 along the east coast of the United States. The northern regions are bracing for that long, dark season when temperatures plunge and people begin hunkering down for the winter. The world seems cool in spirit as much in temperature. Everything slows. Soon, it will be bitterly cold. Days grow shorter, sunlight becomes more rare, retreating behind thick clouds and early sunsets. For some, this is a time of rest and reflection. Quiet evenings by the fire, curled up with a good book. For others, it marks the beginning of seasonal gloom, a darkness that lingers until spring dares return. And for a certain few, the longer nights are something else entirely. They offer the perfect excuse to look up, to gaze into the vast, ink-black sky, and wonder. It's impossible to trace when the first sightings came in, and who started it all. But the buzz was localized in those first few days. Stories between friends, or photos shared on personal social media accounts. Regardless of where it began and who kicked it off, people in central New Jersey suddenly started reporting odd things in the night sky. Some of the unidentified objects were described as lights of varying colors and configurations moving in unpredictable ways. In contrast, other people claimed the objects didn't have any lights, and they just silently hovered in place with no visible propulsion. It was their lack of movement or sound that was most concerning to those witnesses. The blurry photos and shaky videos from those first few sightings slowly spread, and it didn't take long for social media to catch on. Smartphones in hand, the curious and the hopeful began to flock to central New Jersey, hoping to see something for themselves. Others didn't bother. Across the eastern seaboard, all they had to do was step outside and look up. By early December, the news was traveling at a breakneck pace and reaching millions. As more people became aware of it and went to investigate for themselves, the numbers of reports skyrocketed. The barrage of videos and photos seemed endless. But it wasn't just people on their social media accounts anymore. State officials, mayors, military representatives, and even the president-elect were demanding answers. It appeared that the northeastern United States had a mystery on its hands. As the holiday season approached, many people around the world were waiting with bated breath, openly speculating if this was the moment. Was an official disclosure about the presence of alien life visiting Earth about to be made? Was this the moment where government officials would openly say, yes, these are extraterrestrial objects of non-human origin? Was this the time when top-ranking members of Secret Ops would be trotted out and forced to explain themselves and what has happened, particularly over the last 60 to 80 years? Had the moment finally arrived when ordinary people could learn what some scientists had known and been studying for decades. Many people were hopeful, and many in the ufology community held their breath. But as the new year dawned, the story just disappeared. Almost as quickly as the mysterious lights over New Jersey, which had quietly died down, but not vanished completely. Government officials admitted nothing. The media coverage stopped, and the frenzy on social media quickly turned to some other sensational story. For those following the subject regularly, the script had simply repeated itself again. Another event, witnessed and documented by the masses, quickly discounted and swept under the rug without any proof to counter the claim. Just another admission that we, the general public, cannot know everything. But for so many of us, it wasn't just another unsolved incident. It was something more. Another mystery that left us staring into the night sky, asking the same impossible question. What don't we know? Over our next 2 episodes, we're examining the UFO phenomena, or what's now commonly called UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. This is a very rich and incredibly deep topic that can lead even casual researchers and listeners in endless directions. We could cover any possible subject matters over the course of these 2 episodes and still have content to fill seasons and seasons of the podcast. To focus our attention a bit, we're forging a connection between this topic and the regular focus of Haunted Talks, the paranormal. What does the investigation of UAPs have in common with ghostly encounters, hauntings, or other unexplained phenomena? Where do these paths overlap, and where do they split? What can those who chase shadows learn from those who chase lights in the sky? And why are we so deeply compelled by these mysteries, ones that stretch the limits of our understanding, challenge the nature of consciousness itself, and remind us just how little we truly know about the world around us and above us? But before we get to that, last episode, of course, was our big 200th special. And we want to take a quick moment to say thank you for all the messages and kind words that you sent our way. It truly meant a lot to us. If you haven't heard that episode yet, we shared our top 10 favorite Haunted Talks episodes of all time. A journey through some of the creepiest, strangest, and most meaningful stories we've ever told. And while we've been reflecting on the past, it's also time to look ahead. Some of our most popular ghost tours are now returning for the spring, into the summer, and of course culminating at Halloween. In Kingston, we're once again walking the haunted grounds of Queen's University. In Toronto, you can join us for Campus Secrets Inspectors at the University of Toronto, as well as for Ghosts of the Village at Black Creek. In Ottawa, Hidden Ottawa returns very soon. A fun offbeat journey through unusual landmarks, secret histories, and strange but true tales. It's not a ghost tour, but it's certainly full of surprises. We hope you'll think about us when you're making your plans for this summer's travel season. Use the promo code Haunted Talks, all one word, Haunted Talks, at checkout to save 15% off for being a listener. Tickets, tour information, and more stories await at hauntedwalk.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to follow Haunted Talks wherever you listen and consider leaving us a quick rating or review. It's one of the best ways to help other curious and spooky-minded folks find the show. Finally, we'd love to connect with you on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky, all three at Haunted Walk. As we start out, it's important to acknowledge something. There's a lot of UAP research out there. Just like in the paranormal field, people from all walks of life have dedicated themselves to studying these phenomena, testing theories, and chasing for answers. And yet, despite decades of effort, those clear, concrete conclusions still elude us. A good researcher in either field will tell you we haven't unearthed anything irrefutable yet. No smoking gun, no undeniable proof. And that's part of the mystery. And for many, part of the fun. More often than not, investigations end with more questions than they began. Something we're very used to here at Haunted Talks. Our podcast has never claimed to have definitive answers about the paranormal, and we approach UAPs the same way. Instead of offering final truths, we'll explore the process of inquiry, how these mysteries are investigated, how evidence is collected, and how meaning is made. So no, we can't promise you proof. But what we can offer is a deeper understanding of how people seek the truth in the face of the unexplained, and a few new questions that might keep you looking up. Succinctly summarizing the study of UAPs is nearly impossible. But here's some of the highlights for those listeners less familiar with the subject matter. Modern interest in UAPs is usually traced to the period immediately following the Second World War, as the jittery world was recovering from massive cultural disruption and simultaneous debut of nuclear weapons. However, people were certainly interested in UAPs long before the 1940s, and some historians have traced this interest back decades, centuries, and even millennia. Some of the most intriguing mysteries in the United States come from before the World Wars, even before humans had flying technology. But to avoid complication, let's start our timeline in the mid-20th century. By then, people were more used to seeing strange flying objects in the sky, technology had rapidly advanced, and the military was keeping tight-lipped about new things in development. But there were some things in the sky that just didn't seem to belong. It may come as a surprise, given what came later, that the United States government responded to a rash of unexplained UAP incidents by establishing Project Blue Book, a centralized reporting system that ordinary citizens and military personnel could access to document unexplained aerial phenomenon, or what they called at the time, UFOs. From 1952 until it was shut down in 1969, Project Blue Book recorded countless incidents every year. Although many could be explained by known technology or natural occurrences, about 5 to 10% of incidents were categorized as unexplained. By the time the project was closed, the reputation of these so-called UFOs and the people who claimed to see them was taking a dramatic turn. While scientists and government officials initially seemed eager to study the mystery, open acknowledgement came to an abrupt halt, and the narrative shifted. No one is quite sure why, but it happened strikingly fast. By the late 1960s, UFOs were just conspiracy talk, explained by overactive imaginations, hallucinogenic drugs, and a rising science fiction subculture that played with people's perceptions of reality. Witnesses were openly mocked, and the military closed ranks, staying silent about the programs and sightings that were happening. Behind closed doors, it was clear that people continued to investigate, but publicly, the narrative about extraterrestrials had taken a massive turn. It took decades to slowly undo the conspiratorial gloss applied so vigorously in the late 1960s and return UFOs as worthy of scientific study. Despite the tainted reputation, UAPs, reports, and sightings were still coming in, and some of our most terrifying and baffling stories come from this era. Take the Rendlesham Forest incident, or what is often called the UK's Roswell. It all began in the dark night of September 26, 1980, on the east coast of England. Local townsfolk and U.S. soldiers who were stationed at 2 nearby Air Force bases reported seeing strange lights that appeared to fall from the sky and disappeared into the forest. People were certain that the objects behaved like aircraft, not meteors, and concerned calls poured in. Given the security of the location, soldiers were immediately dispatched to where the lights appeared to have fallen. In the dark of the forest, they found a triangular craft with flashing lights of different colors. As they approached it, it quickly rose up, maneuvering through the trees at unbelievable speeds and angles, leaving the soldiers in complete shock and awe. That encounter was baffling enough, but the incident continued. 2 days later, some military officials returned to the forest and found some triangular depressions in the ground, which they then tested for radiation. There were spikes in the immediate area of the triangles, no explanation of why or how, and no other anomalies nearby. During the investigation, the same group of military personnel witnessed flashing red lights on the horizon. But most chillingly, the group clearly saw a triangular configuration of lights that darted through the sky, starting, stopping, periodically beaming lights down towards the Earth. These observations were recorded on cassette tape as they occurred, and the witnesses would later swear they were telling the truth.
Okay, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal. 330, 330, and the objects are still in the sky, although the one to the south looks like it's losing a little bit of altitude. We're turning around and heading back toward the base. The object to the south is still beaming down lights to the ground. 0400 hours, one object still hovering over Woodbridge Base at about 5 to 10 degrees off the horizon, still moving erratic and similar lights and beaming down as earlier.
Although news of this incident spread, particularly in England, it was difficult to compile all the reports in one single place. UAP researchers were so isolated from each other and often found themselves working alone. That was about to change. The advent of the internet and more platforms to share experiences caused a minor earthquake in the UAP research world. Fringe researchers were thrust into the spotlight again, and the reputation of the subject gradually softened, particularly thanks to a growth in popular culture sci-fi. Although official government and military sources remained silent, and even mocking in their tone, people were exploring UAPs in greater numbers and sharing photos and videos like never before. By the early 2000s, the opening research climate was clearly evident, and even official sources began to take notice. In 2017, the American government famously released some of their first statements confirming the presence of aerial phenomena that was of unknown origin. It was not confirmation that extraterrestrial beings were on Earth, and no physical evidence was released, but the admission was very notable. For ufologists, it was the beginning of some validation, but also the start of a whole new problem. As we all know, the internet can be a mixed blessing, and that certainly was the case for UAP research. Very similar to what we've seen in the paranormal realm. On one hand, it opened access to endless numbers of personal accounts and witness testimony that may have been previously withheld or unavailable. The numerous forums where people can share information encourage both witnesses and researchers to come together and no longer hide behind a veil of shame or embarrassment. However, the internet has also encouraged an onslaught of hoaxers, people determined to make some money or gain some clout through clicks. With ever-advancing photo and video manipulation, and now AI, it can be difficult to sort through the actual evidence and weed out the clickbait. Wading through the endless amounts of information is taxing on researchers, especially when much more of that information is probably fake. But issues aside, UAP research is enjoying a wave of fresh brains and interest. People from many backgrounds and disciplines intent on examining mysterious phenomena are searching for answers, or at the very least, some evidence of the unknown. Happening in parallel to the explosion in paranormal research, people are creatively exploring various methods for analyzing and coming together in collaborative ways. UAP researchers come a long way in a few short decades, and there's plenty of promise that this trajectory will continue. Speaking of research, let's examine UAP research and researchers in a little more depth, commonly called ufologists. Similar to people interested in the paranormal field, there's a vast array of personalities and backgrounds in ufology. There are casual hobbyists who read about strange incidents, watch the latest documentaries on Netflix, and sometimes discuss the topic with friends and family. Perhaps a strange encounter of their own started this fascination, or they are curious about other types of mysteries. Even these casual hobbyists can contribute plenty to the field. For both ufology and the paranormal, investigations take a lot of time, effort, often require travel, and may even need special equipment. Hobbyists allow for greater coverage of potential incidents, and in some cases can become the go-to authority for collecting and analyzing evidence due to their vast experiences. However, because they don't have special training, and some of their sources may be wildly overblown internet hoaxes, research by hobbyists is often viewed with a bit of skepticism. Then there is a subset of researchers who are interested in this mysterious phenomenon because they claim an ability to communicate with unknown entities. In the paranormal world, we know of mediums, or sensitives, and other types of communicators who seem especially adept at reaching out to the other side with a variety of techniques. If you're new to UAP research, you might be surprised to learn about the subset of researchers who claim to have these special communication channels with extraterrestrials. They use familiar techniques like hypnotism and telepathy to communicate with these entities and bring their message to a wider audience on Earth. Perhaps the most famous extraterrestrial communicator is Ashtar. Depending on the channeler, Ashtar may be a single being or a group of beings who some mediums claim to have contacted. Ashtar was first made famous by George Van Tassel, arguably the most well-known UFO contactee. He hosted the Giant Rock Interplanetary Spacecraft Convention for years, an event that brought together hobbyists and other contactees alike. While that might sound a little out there, George Van Tassel was actually taken quite seriously at the time and was even interviewed by the head of Project Blue Book. Finally, there's a group of what many consider the more serious researchers, those who use scientific methods, careful analysis, and testing to assess UAP encounters. In fact, there is a significant number of scientifically trained people working on UAP research, attempting to demonstrate the existence of unknown technologies and extraterrestrial beings. This is where the study of UAPs begins to diverge a bit from the more familiar realms of the paranormal. Yes, some paranormal investigators use scientific tools and approaches, and a handful of researchers have even proposed scientific theories about the existence of ghosts. But in terms of institutional or career-level commitment, the scale is different. There aren't many teams of physicists devoting years of their professional lives to the study of haunted houses. UAPs, on the other hand, have drawn attention from scientists across fields. And according to some of them, that interest started within governments, militaries, or major research institutions. Some of that work, they say, remains classified. That means that many more scientists are currently working on secret or behind-the-scenes projects, intent on finding out or even replicating alien technology. As much as we at Haunted Talks believe in the potential of the paranormal, we have to admit, it's not quite the same. No one's offering us secret government contracts to study ghosts, or at least that we can tell you about. Although there might not be as many actual scientists receiving funding or support doing paranormal research, both fields do heavily rely on scientific method and testing for assessing so-called evidence from the field. We're probably all familiar with the basics of the scientific process when it comes to obtaining and evaluating evidence. You start with a reported sighting or incident. Then you assess the claim. Are there other witnesses, or was the person alone? Does the person or people involved tell a similar story, or do their accounts diverge significantly? Are there physical marks or physical evidence left behind? Can the sightings be explained in some other way, like mistaken identity or natural phenomenon? Ideally, we then try to replicate the incident. If there are photos or videos, we try to set up similar conditions and see if we get the same results from capturing the light just so, or angling the recording a certain way. As researchers, we try to approach these questions objectively. Someone may be absolutely convinced of what they saw and are telling their own truth, but it turns out they've experienced something that is a clear alternate or more likely explanation. Like the paranormal, reputable UAP researchers approach each report with a heavy dose of skepticism. There are the familiar hoaxers that are usually easy to weed out, but there's also plenty of very honest and well-meaning people who saw something that can be explained in another way. After going through the process, UAP researchers have found about 5% of all sightings fall into a category of unexplained. If that number does not impress you, we'll consider some of the research organizations that receive up to 1,000 reports per month. That means about 50 unexplained incidents per month, per research organization. That sounds a bit more substantial, doesn't it? So what are the types of stories and evidence that truly grab our attention? What are the reports that usually make it into the unexplained pile and continue to baffle researchers even years later? Well, like paranormal research, it's the type of incidents that seem to have the most corroboration, that is easily verified and confirmed by both physical evidence and eyewitness testimony. The more people who see something, and the more things that are documented, the stronger the case. Two of the most chilling mass sightings, cases that have stuck with people for decades, involve a group not always associated with the unexplained: school children. Let's begin in 1966, in Westall, Australia, then a quiet suburb on the edge of Melbourne. It was April 6th, a typical school day, until it wasn't. A group of students and a teacher glanced up at the sky and saw something strange. Very strange. A rounded object with a dome top hovering overhead, encircled by lights of various colors. It didn't look like anything they had seen before, and they immediately sensed that it didn't belong. They watched, stunned, as the object slowly descended and landed in a nearby field. They weren't alone. Others in the area reported seeing a similar craft, and while the specific details varied, many agreed on one crucial point: the object landed firmly, physically, on the ground. A few of the bolder children crept over to investigate later that day, and what they found was chilling. A large circular impression in the grass, flattened, possibly scorched, proof, they believed, that something had been there. Soon, the military arrived. Official investigators were dispatched, but they reported finding nothing unusual. The old nothing to see here. The locals didn't buy it. Many still don't. There was something strange in the sky that afternoon, and no weather balloon, military test, or optical illusion could explain what they saw. The story echoes another remarkable encounter, one that unfolded nearly 30 years later and halfway around the world. In 1994, at a rural school in Zimbabwe, something extraordinary and deeply personal happened. It is now famously known as the aerial school incident. According to dozens of witnesses, a silver craft, glimmering with shifting colors, descended from the sky and landed in a field just beyond the schoolyard. Then, from the object, figures emerged. They were dressed in black, vaguely human in shape, but clearly not human. And as they approached the children, something even stranger happened. The beings didn't speak, but the children understood them. The messages were telepathic, vivid, emotional impressions about the planet, about humanity, and about the dangers of environmental destruction. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the beings vanished. The children panicked. Some ran. Others froze. Many were left visibly shaken. Teachers and parents quickly realized something unusual had occurred. The children were interviewed, first by school staff, and then later by journalists, psychologists, and researchers. Over 60 children were questioned individually, and remarkably, their stories aligned. Not perfectly, but close enough to unsettle even the most skeptical observers. Attempts to explain the event pointed to mass hysteria, something we've discussed before, a known psychological phenomenon, especially in younger groups. Years later, one student claimed the entire thing had been a hoax, but few believed him. An incident that leaves such a deep, lasting impression on over 60 people, children who can still recall it vividly as adults, deserves more than a quick dismissal. It deserves our attention, our curiosity, and maybe our belief. But what about the baffling incidents that are experienced by just one person? How do we treat those cases? Much like in the world of the paranormal, single witness encounters are difficult to verify. If there's no physical evidence, no photos, videos, nothing left behind, it becomes almost impossible to back up the claim. And so most of the time, these stories are quietly set aside. But UAP encounters, by their nature, are rarely public events. Unless something unfolds over an extended period, like the December 2024 New Jersey sightings, or occurs in a densely populated area, like the famous Phoenix Lights of 1997, which we'll explore in more detail in our next episode. These moments are often brief, sudden, and fleeting. And the people who witness them, they just happen to be in the right place at the right time. So what do we do with these solitary experiences, UAP or paranormal, where there is only a single witness? From a scientific standpoint, the answer is often clear. Without corroboration, we must set that case aside. But for the individuals who have had these experiences, that dismissal can come with a real cost. Many report feeling isolated, mocked, disbelieved, and some researchers now believe the UAP encounters may be significantly underreported because people are afraid to come forward, afraid of what others might say, afraid of how it might change their lives, afraid of being labeled crazy for simply telling the truth as they experienced it. Despite the stigma, many researchers in both the UAP and paranormal fields encourage individuals to come forward with their experiences. Why? Despite the risks, the reasons for this is because when there's no physical evidence, corroboration can still be incredibly powerful. Sometimes two people in the same general area witness something strange, but each assumes they were the only one. They stay silent, isolated. But if both choose to share their stories, they may end up unknowingly corroborating one another. And together, they provide a far stronger case than either could alone. A perfect example of this dynamic played out during the famous Hudson Valley sightings of the 1980s. Between 1982 and 1986, the skies over New York's Hudson River Valley became the subject of intense public attention. An estimated 5,000 eyewitnesses came forward, reporting strange aerial phenomena, often described as enormous V-shaped crafts covered in multicolored lights. These sightings spanned years, towns, ages, backgrounds. And at first, many people stayed silent, afraid of ridicule. But as the reports grew in number, more witnesses stepped forward. Some were stunned to learn that someone else had described the exact same thing, sometimes just hours or miles apart. That growing chorus created a different kind of evidence: patterns. It's true that a handful of the 1984 incidents were later revealed to be part of an elaborate hoax pulled off by local pilots. But even those pilots insisted they couldn't take credit for all of it. The reports varied too much. They stretched too far. Something else, something real, was happening in that sky. Which is why, even now, the Hudson Valley sightings remain one of the most extraordinary examples of mass reporting. And what can happen when people stop staying silent? The Hudson Valley witnesses didn't seem to be especially shaken by what they saw. Perplexed, yes. Intrigued, curious, but not frightened, not terrified. But that is not always the case. Some witnesses of unexplained phenomena have been deeply affected, haunted, if you will, by their encounters. For them, the experience wasn't just strange, it was traumatic. These are the stories that go far beyond lights in the sky. They are personal, invasive, and unforgettable. We're talking, of course, about abductions, the most terrifying corner of UAP encounters. When individuals claim to have been taken from their homes, their vehicles, their lives, and transported somewhere else entirely. Often with no clear memory of what happened, or with memories they wish they could forget. They are stories that blur the line between reality and nightmare. And they will be the focus of our next episode. Thank you so much for joining us. For information on our ghost tours, paranormal adventures, all of our podcasts, anything Haunted Walk related, please visit our website, hauntedwalk.com. With summer quickly approaching, make sure you have your tickets for your spooky adventure this summer. If you haven't already, be sure to follow, rate, and review the show wherever you listen. Those reviews always mean so much to us, and we enjoy reading them tremendously. As always, a special thanks to our hardworking Haunted Walks team, including Michelle Dennis, our outstanding audio editor, and Brittany Boss, who researched and wrote this episode. Until we meet again, keep your eyes on the skies, and sweet dreams.